Oh, there is. So, hello, everyone. We are live, on time, and live. I am here. Well, first, let me introduce myself. For everyone doesn't know me, I'm not going to assume that everybody knows who I am. I'm Dr. Melissa Nolan Chester. I am the host of Doc's Success Formula: Solutions to Personal, Professional, and Relationship Puzzles. And every week, I bring on my friends, my colleagues, my brothers, sisters, just people who are out here doing their thing, and let them talk to you about how they're winning personally, professionally, and in their relationships. And today I have one of my favorites, Dr. William Flip Clay. Dr. William Flip Clay I'm going to talk to you about his resume, and then we're going to talk to him, but he's going to be our guest tonight. And as you can see, that's just a little precursor of what we're going to be talking about a little later on tonight behind him. So you all get ready. Before we start talking, I'm going to read his very brief bio, right? The thing I told you guys this last week, that the greats, they have a brief bio. They don't try to give you their whole life story. They're just like, hey, I'm gonna just give you a little taste. This is what it is. If you want to know more, you can find it somewhere else, right? So Dr. William Flip Clay. Dr. William Flip Clay is a dynamic, innovative, energetic, internationally acclaimed counselor and speaker. Dr. Clay has been featured twice on President's Day in the education section of the Washington Post. He has been featured on WTTG and WDCA Fox 5 News in Washington, D.C., and on the Steve Harvey Morning Show, 96.3 WHUR, with Mr. Tony Richards. After meeting Dr. Clay, the first Hispanic Supreme Court Justice of the United States, Justice Sonia Sotomayor, recognized Dr. Clay as an extraordinary role model and leader. He is the author of Post-Traumatic School Disorder, subtitled Empowerment Strategies for African American Males, and The Diary of an Emotionally Constipated Man. In 2011, Dr. Clay was recognized as the Educator of the Year by the Metropolitan Baltimore Association of Black School Educators. In 2012, the National School of Black School Educators awarded Dr. Clay with the National Marcus Forster Distinguished Educator of the Year Award. He was the first professional school counselor to receive this award in their 20-year history. In 2013, Dr. Clay contributed to the College Board Advocacy and Policy Center Journal series, Transforming the Educational Experience of Young Men of Color Journal series. Dr. Clay is also a member of several professional organizations that include the National Alliance of Black School Educators, the Association of Supervision and Curriculum Development, American School Counselor Association, Black Educators Rock, and he is a member of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. He is a graduate of Charleston Job Corps. He holds an undergraduate degree from West Virginia State University and a graduate degree from Virginia State University. Dr. Clay is also a graduate of the American School of Professional Psychology at Argosy University in Washington, D.C. So, Dr. Clay, I call him Dr. Flip. Dr. Flip, is there anything you want to add to your bio before we get into our conversation that you felt was left out?
No, I think that's pretty good. That was a good summarization.
Good summarization. Okay.
Yes.
Good summarization. So
thank you for that raving bio. So I can stop.
Well, thank you for all the work that you're doing with Black males. Such an important field, we know. And so we're going to do it like we always do. We're going to first get to know the man, right? We're going to get to know who Dr. Flip is, and then we're going to get into this conversation about these emotionally constipated men. And so Dr. Flip, you talked about being in Job Corps before going off to college. So talk to me a little bit about who you are, like where were you raised, how many siblings? Talk to me a little bit about your childhood growing up.
I was raised 30 minutes south of Richmond, Virginia, a town called Hopewell, Petersburg, in that area. I lived with my mother, my father, my older sister, and a stepbrother my father had outside of the marriage. But he didn't live in our house. So it was my sister, myself, my father, and my mother. We live in a 4-bedroom, 2-bath house, nice house, typical family. On the inside, on the outside, everything seemed good. but on the inside, it was total hell.
Mm.
My father started verbally, physically abusing myself when I turned 5. He started verbally abusing my mother from the age of 5 to 9. He would rape her, force her to have sex. He would come home drunk, beat her, and would terrorize the whole home. And I went to school every day from the age of 5 to 9 with this trauma of what I was seeing at home. But on the outside, everything looked wonderful. We went to the mall, we went to the stores. When I turned 9, my father came home one night and he was intoxicated, and he picked up the phone, a handheld phone, and he struck my mother on the side of the face, and she passed out. And I hit him with a lamp, and he ran out the house. They rushed my mom to the hospital. The doctor walked out of the emergency room. He said if the phone would have struck her another inch, she would be blind for the rest of her life. At that point, we moved. My mom, that Tuesday, it occurred. That Thursday, we returned back to the house, and we moved from living in the neighborhood to living in the hood. So when I turned, I was 9 years of age. The same. Also would occur when I was 9. My mother was diagnosed with Kaposi sarcoma skin cancer. So she sat me down when I was 10 years old. I'll never forget it. And she told me, promised me 2 things. And I said, okay, Mom, what is that? She said, never treat a woman like your father treated me and make something of yourself. And I sat there at that time. I really didn't understand really what was going on. She says, well, I'm going to have to teach you how to do some things. Teach you how to cook, clean, take care of the house, and take care of me. Because one day I won't be able to do it because I only have 3 years to live.
Mm.
So I'm 10 years old. My mom was sitting me at a table sharing this with me. So from the age of 10 to 13, went through elementary school traumatized. Father constantly coming home intoxicated, drunk before we moved, forcing my mother to have sex. I could hear her screaming and yelling, crying, and after it was over with, he would get up and leave. That went on for about 2 or 3 years. The physical abuse continued. And I was constipated emotionally. I went to school every day. It was my 3rd grade teacher, Miss Lee, who would always give me hugs. And those hugs meant so much to me because it gave me a sense of hope. From age of 10 to 13, my life was going to school, coming home from school, and waiting on my mom for about 8 to 10 hours. This went on for 3 years. It was traumatizing because my mom had skin cancer. And skin cancer started on her feet and ate her whole body up. Her skin became like when you take a piece of paper and light it with a match. If you were to touch her skin, my fingers would sink in. And so from 10 years to the age of 13, I waited on my mom day and night. Just giving her whatever she needed. Her last year was really rough because she just couldn't do anything. She would moan when she wanted something to eat, or moan when she wanted to drink, or moan when she wanted to go to the bathroom. So, and I talk a whole lot I give more details in my book, but so my mom died when I was in the 7th grade. I'll never forget it. I remember picking up the phone and the doctor was asking to speak to my grandmother. And I said, she's not here. He said, well, I'm just calling to let you know Annie Mae Marsh has expired. And I hung the phone up, went back to sleep, woke up the next morning, won some off the radio. I wasn't bothered, because I was there when my mom was suffering. The moaning, the groaning, the taking 22 pills a day for pain, and when she was in the hospital, they told her if she had her leg amputated, she would live. And she decided she didn't want to have her leg amputated. So after my mom passed, my dad didn't really want to have anything to do with me. And I didn't want to live with him anyway, because he never came to see my mom when I was sick. So I had a lot of hatred toward my father because of what he did to me as a child and what he did to my mother growing up. So I ended up living with my grandmother, and she raised me from middle school to high school. I communicated with my father. For 2 years, he would speak to me on Thursday and promise he would pick me up on Friday morning. He only came twice.
I know that story.
I would pack my clothes on Thursday night and sit on the step waiting for him to pick me up on Friday, all excited. And he came twice. And my 10th grade year, I pretty much said, F you. And my life went on. I graduated from high school, barely made it out of high school. And then I ended up going to Job Corps after working a couple of years because I need to get away from home. So that's my story growing up. There's a lot more in that story, but I'm just giving you the.
Yeah, I got you. I know they'll have to get the book to get all of it. I got you. We're giving them an intro now to get all.
That was a learning experience for me.
So is your dad still alive?
Now my dad died about 7 or 8 years ago, and it was funny because we was riding in the truck one day, and see, my father was still emotionally incarcerated from his childhood, and he said to me, I wish I could have done some things differently growing up. But there's nothing I can do to change what I didn't do. But he couldn't say I'm sorry because of his emotional incarceration.
Emotional incarceration. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Yes, it's 3 stages. I came up with this non-diagnosis.
Wow, we can't get in there yet. We're gonna get to that in just a minute. We got to finish talking about you first. I want you to hold that one. Okay. So here you are now, Job Corps. Talk to me a little bit about how did you leave Job Corps and then subsequently get into college and get these degrees. Talk to us a little bit about that.
When I left home to go to Job Corps, I went to Charleston, West Virginia, and I sat down with Miss Wanda. She was my counselor. I'll never forget her. And Miss Wanda said, "Well, Flip, you graduated from high school. You want to go to college?" I said, "Sure." So she says, "Okay, just take up your trade and do what you're supposed to do, and you'll let you go to college." So I did exactly what Wanda told me to do. I completed my trade, and they paid for me to attend West Virginia State University. And I stayed in West Virginia State University. I stayed in Job Corps, went to West Virginia State University, graduated, transferred to Virginia State University, graduated, and went on to Argo City American School of Professional Psychology to complete my doctorate. So Job Corps was the best experience of my life. I learned so much there for the 3 years I was there. I mean, I learned a whole lot. Met a lot of people. Was introduced to go-go music because my roommate was from DC. He used to play it every morning, and I got tired of it till he invited me to a go-go in DC, and I lost my mind. My life.
Okay. So Job Corps. A lot of people Job Corps. What is Job Corps? How would you describe Job Corps? If you were doing a commercial for Job Corps, I recently went and spoke at a Job Corps here in Jacksonville, and my baby sister actually was on my dad's side was going to go to Job Corps, but I ended up getting her and putting her in junior college. But what exactly is Job Corps?
Well, when I attended Job Corps was a training. How can I? Well, I mean, it's like a technical school and trade school, and it's free. And they pay you to go to school. They pay you. They give you a clothing allotment. They put money in your account, and then they pay you to go to school every 2 weeks. And when you come out, you will have completed your trade. You'll have a lump sum of money put away. If they have a college program, you can go to college for free. But I get so that's the only way I can summarize. That's the only thing I remember.
That's good enough. That's good enough. So so Job Corps gave you the skill sets because, like you said, you were your mom. She passed away in junior high school. Your dad was emotionally unavailable, physically unavailable, and so then you go through Job Corps and you listened to somebody. That's how you got to college. And it's so funny you say that because that's the same way I got to college. My mom had me at 17. She dropped out of high school, and I went to college because of Upward Bound program. I was in the Upward Bound program. And
Okay.
they're like, okay, you're smart enough to go to college. And it was like, fill these papers out. And they actually got me the Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune Scholarship, but it was because of listening to people. And like you said, it helped me to get to college. So I thought that was interesting that you said that. Let me ask you, and I'm asking this question. I'm asking this question for a very personal reason. I'm going to precurse my question with that. Writing your story. Do you think it was easier to write your story because your parents are deceased?
No. I think it was easy writing the story because it was healing. It was closure. It was the release of years of emotional incarceration, emotional constipation. And it allowed me to heal at the same time, knowing my story would help someone else to heal, especially our brothers.
Right. Let me tell you why I asked that question. So I went and spoke today at Teen Leaders of America. My Sora Marcia Brown, she runs a program for teens, 6th through 12th grade. And I tell my story. Like I go into small settings and tell my story. But people are always asking, when are you going to write the book? And I'm like, I don't want to write the book because to tell my story is to tell other people's stories. And I'm not, I don't know if I'm ready to, because my mom, I love my mom. My mom is actually experiencing major depression right now. She has been battling that for about 20 years. And it's because she's emotionally constipated. She's emotionally incarcerated. She dealt with a lot of trauma in her life. There's some cyclical generational things that have occurred in our families that she's dealt with, that I dealt with. And she's never been able to purge. But to tell her story is to tell my mom's story, and it's to tell my dad's story, and it's to tell my uncle's story, and it's to tell so many people, about the trauma that I experienced. Is not was, the people who inflicted some of that trauma are those closest to me. And so, I was just wondering, was it easier for you to tell that story, because they weren't here? Because I want to tell my story, and I've debated on whether it was going to be fiction or nonfiction, because much like you, I have a story, and my story is it's compelling, and it's a lot of trauma. And I too, I guess, just kept all that emotion in, just emotionally constipated. So I was just curious.
Yeah, and when I wrote my first book, Post-Traumatic School Disorder, I shared some of my father's trauma, and my father was highly upset when I published that book. He was alive at that point. He stopped talking to me for about 6 months. And I reverted back to when I was a child. So I said, F you. And I prayed on it. And I said, God, if you, I don't want to talk to him anymore. And he ended up reading the book a little further, because on the latter part of the book, I talked about a chapter of the healing, that my father and I was now on better terms. But he didn't read the book to get to that point. I guess he woke up one night and read it, and it was like, so then that Christmas, he said he wanted 6 copies to give to his friends, because around that time period I had just finished my doctorate, and of course, that's my son. Like he had did all this stuff for me growing up. When that Negro ain't do nothing. But anyway, that's the whole conversation. But to answer your question in reference to writing that book, I talk about the 4 T's of trauma. You must transfer your trauma with truth and transparency, and that's very important. It's an activity, especially when I'm working with brothers.
Oh, I want to get into it, but we got one more thing. We got to talk about you professionally. We got to tell them who you are professionally first, and then we're going to get all into it. We're going to get into it. So here you are, you've gone through Job Corps, which was, helped to build that character. You went on, you were self-sufficient, self-reliant, went through school. You got your bachelor's, master's, and PhD. And now where do you start working at first? How was it? I mean, you were in school. You talked about winning some awards in school. So talk to me a little bit about that professional career.
I started off in Prince William County Public Schools as an elementary school counselor. From there, I was there 2 years. They felt I was a little urban. So when it was time for tenure, they did not offer me tenure. So I moved to Prince George County, Maryland. And I've been a professional school counselor in Prince George County, Maryland since 2000. I started off in elementary school my first 12 years.
Mhm.
After elementary school, I decided I wanted to do something different, and I changed over to middle school. So I've been a middle school counselor for the last 8 years, specializing in crisis counseling, dealing with a lot of molestation, incest, and rape for the last 8 years. Been on the crisis team in my school district, um, which has been a real eye-opening experience. And then I started consulting and speaking back in 2004. Eric Corp became my mentor when I first started. Spoke at NAFC for the first time, and then continued to branch out and continue to work. And then I went back to school to complete my doctorate. So in 2012, I finished up my doctorate.
So here you are, Dr. William Flip Clay, and you still are a school counselor, helping our babies to kind of manipulate and manage that trauma that they experience daily.
Oh yeah, yes, and it helps me too.
Amen. Do you think that was that your calling? How did you know? Was that always where you wanted to be? Like you said, Job Corps. What trade did you get? How did you transition into? You knew that was going to be your life path?
Yeah, when I was in Job Corps, the newspaper interviewed me for some reason. Oh, I won this award when I was in Job Corps. I forgot the name of the award, but I won this. I was the student of the year or something. So this newspaper interviewed me, and they asked me what did I want to do when I grow up, and I said at that time I wanted to be a probation officer because I wanted to help people who were struggling with trauma and issues based on what I had went through as a child and what I had learned in Job Corps. So I knew I wanted to be a counselor. So, and then when I attended West Virginia State University, I realized this is my calling. This is what I really want to do. So, and then
And
from
you
there,
never look back.
never look back.
Okay. So now we have that landscape of who you are personally and professionally. And so now let's talk. You said the first book you wrote. So the first one, what was the name of the first book?
Post-traumatic food disorder, empowerment strategies for African American males. And pretty much that book was just focusing on how to address the trauma of young boys of color, especially African American boys in elementary school. Because I was an elementary counselor and I had implemented programs, data-driven programs that was very successful. So I said, well, let me take the program and put it into a book. So in that book, I talk about it. I was attending a conference in Atlanta and listened to Dr. Jawanza Kunjunfu.
And I might have said his name to me today. Yes.
And I call this the double K's because Kunjunfu hit me in the face first and Kafele kicked me in the butt. But Kunjunfu stated, if you're working in a public school and you're not teaching kids their African American history and their true history of who they are, you're doing them a disservice. And I was like, wow. And I'm an elementary counselor, like, okay, how can I implement this? And then I met Kafele in Boston. He was on the same speaking at some kind of conference.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, he was still a principal, and he was talking to me about his empowerment program in high school. And I said, well, I've already kind of set one up in elementary school, but let me take it to another level. So I developed my elementary school empowerment program, and that program we ended up Steve Harvey Morning Show. I mean, it was just the data, the success behind the data-driven successful program was off the chain. My first year I had 25 boys. My second year, 35. My third year, we had 55 boys in the elementary school. And the principal, when I sat down the principal the first year, she said, you can do whatever you want to do, keep them out my office. I said, that's fine. Because I'm attending all these conferences and I'm learning all this. I said, that's not a problem. So I put together the program, and from there it just took off, and lights, camera, action.
Okay. So someone wants to know, what are a few strategies that you practice to address the multi-level trauma of African American males?
Some of my unique strategies in the school setting or in general? Did they? I
think this is an AP assistant principal, so I think she means school setting first. Let's say school setting first, and then let's talk about in general.
Okay, in the school. Well, of course, you talk about implementing an empowerment program. But strategies I use, for example, in my empowerment program, around the school, I developed this form called a shout-out form. and it was strictly for the boys in my program.
It's called, what is it called?
A shout out form.
Shout out form. Okay.
Okay. So every time a young man in my program was seen around the school doing something that was extraordinary, a staff member will fill out a shout out form. Now, my boys were required to return those forms to me throughout the week. So because of their ego, and every week we would report when we met. So they would walk into my office and give me a shout out form that a staff person had filled out or someone in the school that filled out that saw them doing something that was kind of extraordinary, pretty much. Another strategy we use, I developed what I call AAA. I don't know why I give those are two. This is a AAA called Action, Attitude, and Accountability. You know, I taught my boys in elementary school, when you have an emotional breakdown, you check your AAA. I said, because when a car breaks down, they call AAA. But you're going to check your AAA. You're going to check your action, you're going to check your attitude, and you're going to be held accountable. So, and we had AAA placed all over the building. Not only did my boys in my program pick it up, but the students started picking it up. So those are a couple of strategies I use in my school setting. And I talk about them in my book also. A lot of other
action, accountability, and what was the third one?
Action, attitude, and accountability, called AAA.
Okay.
And they had them on the back of their shirts. For example, in my elementary program, my school was Ardmore. So they would have black shirts with silver metallic and had MOA, Men of Ardmore. And that was for my 5th and 6th grade boys. And then for my K through 3 were the Little Men of Ardmore. So part of my 5th and 6th grade mandatory, in order to be in the program, they had to become mentors to K through 3. Because the 5th and 6th graders could see themselves in the K through 3. So we had Men of Ardmore and Little Men of Ardmore. So those are some strategies, a couple strategies we use.
Strategy that you do for multi-level trauma. So, I mean,
okay, now multi-level trauma in middle school, or even in elementary school, we met weekly during lunch and recess. The boys, because most of your young men, especially, they need somewhere to go where they can release. I don't care if it's elementary or middle school. You have to provide an environment once a week where they can go and to release the trauma or the issues that they're afraid to talk about. And how did I do it when I was in elementary school? This is when I really started using the toilet analogy. It was a little radical, but this was the only way I could get my elementary school kids to understand the importance of releasing. So we will have healing circles. But when we have our group meetings, I will hand out a little toilet, a toilet about a hand-sized toilet, and each one of them would pass it around in a circle. This was like our second week. And I asked them what did they think of the toilet. And of course they started laughing, you know. They 5th and 6th graders, so they started giggling and laughing. But with the analogy, I related emotional waste to releasing trauma waste, the waste of trauma. And they got it. So from that standpoint, the walls pretty much came down. And it gave them permission to say, oh, we get it now. I said, yeah, because when you sit on the toilet to release the physical waste, how do you feel? They said, good. And I said, sometimes you got to moan, sometimes you got to strain a little bit. And they started laughing and giggling, but I said, when it come out, it's going to feel good. So then I would say, but what is inside of you that you never talked about, that you know if you release it, you can feel better? Boom. And that started the healing. And then when I went to middle school, I was able to turn it up a little bit to meet the emotional level of middle school.
So with these strategies and these tactics that you use, you never had issues of confidentiality issues, like these babies were comfortable talking, because, you know, when we think of Black males, and, you know, we know historically that Black men are the way they are because of us. You know, I was talking to a colleague today, Dr. Mosley, Jerome Mosley. He runs a program here, Bridge Builders United. And I was saying, you know, one thing that we all know, that we teach Black boys primarily, like to withhold and to don't be emotional. I said, you know, you have a daughter and a son and they fall down. If the daughter falls down, it's, oh, come here, little princess, and you're babying her and she's allowed to. But that little boy is like, hey, suck them tears up. What you crying for? Boys don't cry. And we teach that at such an early age, and that is reinforced throughout their lives. And then we grow up and then we're wondering why we have these men who can't communicate. These men who don't talk, and everybody acting like, oh, I don't know why he don't. I mean, because we've been, as a society, as parents, everything has taught Black men that they're not supposed to be, quote unquote, soft or weak or emotional. And
right, so, and then when you go and if you breaking it down from a school setting, we're talking about, I call it emotional psychological incarceration, and we can look at it from the school setting in the private setting. Emotional psychological incarceration is a non-diagnostic disorder. So that means it's not in the medical dictionary.
Right.
The first stage is emotional constipation, which occurs from birth to the age of 14. That's when a man or a male or a child is exposed to trauma. And because males are not taught to express their emotions become constipated. Now, if you don't address the constipation, this is why you need empowerment programs in middle school and elementary school, middle school and high school. The highest failure rate is in 9th grade. Why? Because you're now leaving constipation going into the phase of emotional incarceration. I've never dealt with that trauma, and for the first 14 years of my life, I'm angry. I'm stuck. Now you're forcing me to go into the 9th grade. I'm academically behind. I haven't dealt with my constipation. I'm in an environment at home that's driving me crazy, and you expect me to pass this test when I haven't been taught how to deal and manage my emotions. So now my emotions become incarcerated. I walk into a public school, a 9th grade classroom. I'm angry. I'm upset. I don't give a F. And there's nothing you can do to help me because you don't understand. And they're emotionally incarcerated.
Right.
And the final phase is physical incarceration. If you look at the amount of men in prison, and you look at the constipation, you're going to see that there's a correlation between the constipation, incarceration, and the prison industrial complex. Because once you are forced in those prison cells, you are forced to look at your constipation, which occurred as a child that you never dealt with. So now that you're in prison, you have to go back and look at your constipation, which caused you to make that decision to go into the physical incarceration. So in order for school systems around the country to really address the issues with Black and brown boys, every school, urban school, needs an empowerment program to help young Black and brown boys manage and deal with their emotions. And those boys need to be
programs. Definitely need to be mandatory. I totally agree with you.
And it needs to be, those same young men need to be tracked into middle school with a middle school empowerment program where you bring the church, the community, the parents, and you bring the resources together. In my elementary school program, that's exactly, I reached out to the churches, I reached out to the community, I reached out to my network, and I reached out to my parents. It was fabulous for 3 years. I mean, field trips, events, activities. And I taught, this is something else, this is a strategy I taught my young men too. I said, now listen, when we walk outside this building, there's 5 people you better not never disrespect or embarrass. Yourself, the organization, your parents, the principal, and Dr. Clay. I said, and when they ask you what you want to be when you grow up, you better not say football player or basketball player. I said, you tell them you want to be a productive citizen and give back to the community. This was drilled in my program. You want to be a productive citizen and give back to the community. Dr. Chester, we went on this field trip, and I took 15 of my boys to meet this Washington Wizard basketball player. We're coming up the elevator, and I'll never forget it. And my boys walk, you know, they got their black shirts on, and they, you know, all the students looking at them and go, who is this? So the white news reporter walked over to me and asked me who I was. And I explained it to him. And I said, well, I have my president, the vice president, a couple of the members of my organization here. She said, can I interview them? I said, sure. So you know what she asked him?
What do you want to be when you grow up?
He said, "A productive citizen and give back to the community." That white lady turned about 6 or 7 different colors, and I just started laughing. And then we reported back to the following week. He reported back to the group what happened. So, man, Mr. Cliff was right, man. Man, that lady turned several colors when I said that. And then the lady had the nerve to ask him, so what do you mean by that?
Mm.
And I had already drilled them on it. They was ready. He says, well, I can become a productive citizen. I can get a job. I can go to college. I can be somebody if I choose to be. She was like, oh. Because, see, she was expecting football, baseball play. But
Right.
now, getting back to, you talked about confidentiality. In elementary school, because my boys are so proud of the program, they had to fill out a confidentiality sheet, and also I painted the program like, this is your group, this is your school. You don't want nobody to know what we're talking about in our group. This is us. And they fell for a hook, line, and sinker because all boys want to belong to something.
Yes, so true.
They all want to, and think about an elementary school with 600 kids. And you got your black shirts on, you walk around, and everybody want to know what's going on with your group, your organization, and you don't tell them. So middle school is a little different with the confidentiality piece. They filled out the form, but you always have 1 or 2 who want to push the button a little bit. So yeah, to address the confidentiality piece.
So that was just something that, and most people, like, we know that our babies just want something to belong to. And so I know that, like you said, if you give them that safe space, that safe place, that, I can only imagine the type of healing that takes place in a group like that. I know that that's magic.
Yeah, especially now middle school. Woo, wow. That incarceration is serious in middle school because you're talking about almost 13 years of constipation. And a middle school healing circle, I'm talking tears. I'm talking, middle school really woke me up, especially when it came.
They get to purge. They get the purge.
You're talking about 12 or 13 years of just being emotionally constipated. I mean, my boys couldn't wait for our Monday meetings after school. I mean, in the beginning, we meet today, Clay. Yeah.
Tell me about some of those transitions, like with those guys. You saw what the hardest guys turned into. Like, talk a little bit to me about, like, what are those experiences like? Elementary, like, okay, when you take a child and you're putting them in these programs, and what type of subtle, is it more subtle than, like you said, with middle school, is like, it's like a complete 180. What is that like when you're experiencing?
Yes. Elementary school is more subtle because the young men are yearning to be leaders, but they don't have anyone to teach them how to be a leader. So they're more open to learning what it means to be a man, a young man, and what it means to be a leader. So the transitions were not as eye-catching or captivating like middle school. But the transition did occur in elementary school now. My president, matter of fact, I still talk to him like once every 2 weeks. He got into the program his 5th grade year. He was off. I mean, he constantly stayed in trouble. And he was a school board. Everybody in the school loved him. So when he became part of my program, it changed the school culture. And he wanted to become president his 5th grade year. And I said, in order for you to become president, you have to become a leader. And he took on that role. Now, he had a lot of street with him. And I had to tone him down to his leadership capabilities. The males in the building were on board. The teachers in the building was on board. And we started to see his transition. So his 6th grade year, he became president. Middle school is a whole nother apple because you're talking about 13 years of conservation. So I recall this one young man. I forgot. I can't remember his name. He had his criminal record was ridiculous. He was in transit. My school was this school that he was stopping before his private placement. And part of him, he was on my case though, and I never forget it. When I read his file, I was like, whoa. So when he entered to the school, he was a big guy. And when I met him, One thing I've learned as a middle school counselor, you need to tell your story. See, you have to be very transparent.
You have to be raw and transparent with those babies. Yes.
Yeah, because see, they love a story. So I told him my story. He sat in my office for an hour and 15 minutes. And I said, I'm not even going to read your story. I don't want to know what happened in your life unless you want to tell me. I had already read his file. We built this rapport. So his first 2 weeks, he was cool. His third and fourth week, he started acting a straight fool. I mean, his file started really showing. So he got suspended. And part of him coming back to school, he had to join my program, my middle school empowerment program. And I remember bringing him down to my office. And I said, look, man, you got to come to my program. Man, fuck that shit. I ain't coming to the program. I said, look, bro, it's up to you. What you going to do? You know, the principal said you got to do it. So we met on that Monday. And he came in and sat down. And he watched them boys crying. Because in middle school, our meetings were hardcore. We was straight, it was straight raw. And he was shocked to see 13 and 14-year-old boys crying. The second week, I'll never forget it, Dr. Chester. I saw him that week and I said, how did you like the group? He ain't said nothing. The second week, he was the first one in the room. And he sat down. I walked into the room. He had his feet, because he was real big for his age. And we had a protocol that we followed. And he raised his hand because he wanted to tell his story. He said, this is the second time in my life I've talked about this. He said, when I was 3 years old, my mom kicked me down the steps. They removed me from the house. He says, I've been angry since. And he just started crying. He said, my mom was on drugs. She kicked me down the steps. I rolled down the steps. He said, this is my second time talking about it. And this boy was 14 to 15 years of age. He'd been locked up in all kinds of and that was his aha moment. And that was the second time he ever talked about it. So he came to my office later on that week. And I remember just sitting down talking with him. And he was like, man, I don't know why they keep giving me this medicine. It's the only thing I need to do is just talk about what's bothering me. But I can't talk to my psychologist because they ain't like you, Dr. Clay. They ain't like you. You know, he a white guy. He don't understand, but you get it. So, and there were other stories in the middle school. Now, I did not keep the academic data or the data on the program, but the emotional component, it was healing. And the teachers saw the difference in the boys in the classroom because they had a place they could go to release.
Yes. I definitely listen. So when I was in Tallahassee, a pastor friend of mine, and I had to bring him on my show. He has to do my show, but his name is Pastor Greg James. He was a pastor, but now the side story, he was a pastor. They used to sell drugs. They ended up going to prison, was supposed to do life in prison, but that's a whole nother story. But fast forward to where we are, he's starting a mentoring program at this middle school in Tallahassee that we started together. And it was positive proof mentoring. And what we did was just what you said. We had counseling. They had small group where they went with the counselor. And we also used the arts. So Greg had actually written a play about, and it was called Choices. And it was an all boys play. So they had to make the parts to the play. They had to create and they were the actors, but it was about making choices. And it was about a young man whose mom had died and his dad was raising him. It wasn't a real good relationship. And the boy got into selling drugs, right? He had choices to make, and it's all male. And just to watch those guys, and we did keep the data. I mean, like you said, their parents, their teachers, counselors, like people were like writing us letters and coming to see like what is going on, like crying with the things because these young men were being transformed. They were healing people. And it was because of that small group and then that play, because they were living some of the things that they were doing out there, in that play.
Right.
He's selling drugs. He ends up selling drugs, and I won't ruin the story, but the play is powerful. And I've been bothering Pastor Greg James and telling him, so I'm shouting you out, Greg. We got to start this play back up and take this play because it's something that was so powerful along with that small group. And so to your point, these babies are yearning and desiring and needing these types of platforms. We just have to provide them for them.
I mean, it's very simple. It's not as complicated. It's like, okay, if you go into a school, the average school in this country, 5% of your population will call 95% of your problem. Okay, you already know that.
That's
and
right.
You know they're gonna be 9 times out of 10. They're probably gonna be some boys.
That's right.
So we don't have to make this complicated. You put the resources in place to follow them from elementary to middle school to high school.
That's it.
It's not complicated.
It's not. We let them make it complicated, and so we just have to go back into what we know. We have to start. We have to do what we know to do to fix our babies. So I'm going to transition you now into the Black Man. This Diary of an Emotionally Constipated Man. Talk to me about those 3 T's and those things you were trying to talk to me about earlier. Talk to me about what happens when they don't get a Dr. Flip in middle school or elementary, and they don't get a chance to purge, and they don't get a chance to get rid of some of that constipation. And then we have these grown men now who are, like you said, emotionally constipated into emotionally and psychologically, not emotionally incarcerated.
Correct. That's the second stage.
So talk.
Yeah. So reverting back to my elementary and middle school experience and looking at my personal life growing up, I just saw a lot of constipation and emotional incarceration. And then utilizing these strategies in the school setting and then on a private setting, working with former gang members, and a lot of these young boys became grown men.
Right.
So I was like, wow, these strategies will even work with adult men, because these were young boys at one time. So one of the strategies I use, I talk about the 4 T's. You transfer your trauma with truth and transparency. And that's something I always share when I'm dealing with males in general. You transfer your trauma with truth and transparency. Because as men, we can't heal unless we transfer that trauma with truth and transparency. So, I might have a doctorate degree and I might have a good job, but I'm emotionally incarcerated because I'm afraid to transfer that trauma with truth and transparency. I can't fulfill my God-given purpose because I'm scared of the 4 T's. And then I, always challenge the brothers. I ask them, what or who is your trauma trigger? What triggers your trauma? Who triggers your trauma? What was your question? We talk about the brothers. The Diary of an Emotionally Constipated Man. So I reference a lot of this information. The objective and goal was to start the healing process. That's why I just named that title, because of that constipation and incarceration that I personally went through and what I was seeing professionally in and out of the school setting. So I developed the 4 T's. I talked about the emotional, psychological incarceration. I started using the analogy of the toilet on a broader scale.
Yeah, that toilet is a super visual. So I remember when you brought it to the Rock conference, to the Rock, when you talk about that and how like that thing is just right, like you said, because you got to get all that ish up at you. You got to.
Yeah. And I use it a lot when I use it a lot in my presentations with men, and you just have to be in the room to watch their reaction. It's when I pull the cover off, they don't know what they're about to get hit with. But at the end of my sessions and my presentations, there's tears. It's healing.
Because you're purging. Anytime that you're getting rid of all that that's toxicity. That's the one thing you don't understand. We're all, and not just black men, black women. We all have this toxicity that we're not purging. So I can only imagine how powerful that would be to be in a room of men and seeing that transference, that transformation. And so,
yes. And what I usually, when I start those sessions off, I stand beside my toilet, and I have every male in the room is given a sheet of toilet paper. And in the toilet, I have statements written from other men. I keep them in the toilet. So I pull out the toilet and I say to the men, here are some of the issues that men around the country have stated that they deal with. And I said, we're going to flush fornication down the toilet.
Mm.
We're going to flush my father not being in my life down the toilet. We're going to flush pornography down the toilet. We're going to flush adultery down the toilet. We're going to flush your coworker who about to get you in some trouble down the toilet. The one that's in your cell phone. And the different issues that we deal with as men. And I said, now here are what men are saying around the country. And see, I love challenging men because you have to challenge men. You have to challenge them. Men love a challenge because of their ego. So I want you to write down what is your issue, brother. Write your issue down. And then at the end of my presentation, I have the brothers march down and start the process of healing. So we're going to flush your issue down the toilet. And then you give them directions on their next steps. And it's real because, you know, the first thing I ask them, how many of you ever sat on the toilet before? They start laughing. And how many of you ever dropped a good one? They start laughing. How does it feel? It feels good. So then I say to them, what emotionally that you haven't released? That you know when you talk about it, you're going to feel better.
When did you start expelling your constipation? At what age did you start?
That's a good, when I was in Job Corps. Yeah. Because when I was in Job Corps, I was away from home and I had to self-reflect on my life. So that was my healing process. So a lot of stuff I was doing in Job Corps, that's why I think I won that award too, because I was helping a lot of students with their emotional imbalance. So yeah, when I was in Job Corps. That's a good question. Nobody never asked me that question. Only the doctor asked that question. Oh, I just caught a cramp. Shoo.
You know, when you because most times, like, you know, we know the saying, you know, not only am I the spokesperson, but I'm a client, or however that little saying goes. But when you're a client of your craft and you're someone who has experienced it, I'm just wondering, when did that enlightenment happen for you? And, you know, so what made you say, you know what, I got to get to it and help others to experience this purging? I was just curious as to when did yours happen? And so that's when you had the transferring of that trauma. That's when the transparency, you let it out. You purged.
Yeah. And that started my healing process. And then later on and then it continued to enhance as different people entered into my life.
Right.
I went through a stage when I left Job Corps and I got in college. After I got out of college, even though I hated my father, I still wanted to be like my father. And my father was a manipulator. He was a womanizer. He was trifling, but he was still my father. So I went through a stage where I became a male escort, and I had 14 individuals working for me, and I made plenty of money for about 3 years. I would throw parties, and the males would take their clothes off, and I would get my money, and they would get their money, because I wanted to be like my father, and that's the only thing I knew. My father was a womanizer, but then I had 2 girls working for me also. So they only stayed with me for a year because my conscience started bothering. From what my mother told me, I remember riding in the car with them. We was going to do this private show, and I asked, it was Sugar and Spice, and I said, Sugar, why do you do this? And she said, because I have a son. I was like, what? And it took me back when I was 10. And we did a couple more shows after that, and I just poured them to the side, and I said, ladies, I can't do it.
But you kept going with the guys. You kept going with the male escorts.
Oh yeah, I kept calling my boys now. Oh yeah, that was getting that money. Oh, I was making money. And then
how did that come to an end? What was the enlightenment with that? How did that just like what happened?
Oh, I met this young lady, and she was heavy in the church, and so
there are women looking at. Listen, we the answer. We're the answer always. Just always remember that we're the answer.
So I met this young lady, and she was heavy in the church, and you know we connected, and she was just like, well, if you want to continue, if you want to start dating, if we're going to be spending time together and dating each other, you have to give that life.
And you were willing to give it up for.
And I said, you talking to me? Cause here I am. I got, I'm making money. I mean, I got it all. I mean, I'm living this
life.
I'm doing it. And
Nino Brown.
And she said to me, I threw a party and I made a couple $1,000. And I said, let's go shopping. And she said, I'm not going shopping with that dirty money. I was like, what? I said, hold on. I said, hold on. A woman gonna turn down shopping? She said, I'm not going shopping with that dirty money. Now, you need to make your decision. What you gonna do? And I was like, and she gave me she pretty much said, okay, what you gonna do? Because I was continually manipulating her. Because an apology without change is manipulation. Please understand.
Oh, snap! Did y'all hear that one? An apology without change is Let me put that one in the chat for them too. That's so true. I like it. I like that one, Dr. Flip.
I was manipulating, apologizing, and I didn't want to change. But she said to me, you need to make a decision. I threw my last party, made my money, and I gave it up to be with her. And I'm glad she came into my life because I was headed down. When I say I was headed down the wrong road,
so first she was really God sent. She helped. She really was God sent.
It was, and God always used women to get me to where I need to get to. First it was the counselor in Job Corps. Then it was the 2 strippers, or women, and then I met this young lady who challenged me, who stated, because see, ladies, let me just be very transparent here.
Be transparent, Dr. Flip.
If a brother is lying to you and manipulating you, he don't care about you. If he don't change, and you have to give him, women, I want to get married, and you stay with this guy 10 years and he ain't put a ring on your finger, you're not getting married. Okay? If you don't put a ring on your finger, you're not. If he ain't married you in 10 years, y'all not getting married. And if you do get married, he ain't gonna be with you long. So I gave it up. And,
so women, hold on. The moral of the story here is, I mean, a man can only treat you the way you allow him to treat you, right? Yep. He's only going to treat you the way you allow him to treat you. We are the change that we seek, right? I keep bringing on these black men. Y'all see all these black men I be bringing through here now. I bring my sister through sometimes, but y'all know I be having a heavy emphasis on my black men. From the Dr. Flips, the Dr. Marcus Jacksons, the Dr. Sean Woodley. Y'all know I brought them to y'all because y'all be, ain't no black men. It's a lot of them out there. Now, only a handful of the ones I brought on here were married. Most of the ones who have been on my show thus far were single. Dr. Flip is single. But y'all got to step your games up out here. Y'all be out here, you acting like a dime, and you want to get 100, but you a 10 cent, but you want 100. You gotta request it. You gotta demand it. Ladies, he's telling you, an apology without change is merely manipulation. That's a word right there, Dr. Flip.
I mean, that's the truth. I mean, because see, we get comfortable in our emotional ignorance as men. And women, they feed right into it.
We do. Because you know why? Black women, we have this savior complex. We want to save that man. I see the potential in him, and I know he can be a good man, and I know I'm the woman to bring it out of him. And we'll spin our wheels and we'll spend eons trying to bring something out of him. And the thing about potential is it can go either way. It can be manifested or not. And we'll spend decades nothing manifesting. And most of it is because of our egos. We don't want to be the fool. right? Be wrong to ourselves and others, so we'll stay in it much longer than we should because we're hoping that this is going to be the day. This is going to be the year that he changes. And then, it's all futile. It's all for naught.
And DeAndre Winfield, he was interviewing him, and this quote just blew my mind. He stated, "When you enable a boy, you disable a man." When you enable a boy, you disable a man.
Who was that? Who said that?
DeAndre Whitfield. I was like, wow. That's heavy.
That's heavy.
That's real heavy.
Ooh.
That's heavy.
Oh, and that goes to talking about, that goes right into what we do, Black women, with these boys we raise. We enable them. We enable them, and we encourage them, and we're the ones doing it to them, and then what we've done is disabled them as men, ladies.
And genetic loads the gun, and environment pulls the trigger. Because see, a lot of mothers, unfortunately, the environment that you have your young man that he's in, it's not conducive to teaching him how to be a man. And not to say a single mother can't raise a young boy. I'm not saying that. So when that young boy, when a single mother's raising a young man and she's trying to figure out how can I help him and that's the environment. And he's struggling because he's trying to become a man and he's dealing with society. And then he walks into a school where 85% of the teachers are white. Then he watches TV where he's being dragged across he's being talked about and all this trauma is going on. And then the mom is sitting here struggling, trying to figure out how can I save him. But if you go back, Dr. Chester, and I'm going to give you an analogy, and I share this in a lot of my workshops when I'm doing a lot of my parent workshops. I want you to, for the listening audience, I want you to think about 6 people. On the left-hand side, you're going to have the slave master on your left-hand side. On the right-hand side, you're going to have the mother, the father, the sister, and the daughter. So that's 5 people. Now, the father will exit the family and go to the slave master. The slave master destroys the father. Father's out of the picture. Who's left? You have the slave master, the mother, and 2 children. How will the mother respond to her 2 children, Dr. Chester? How does she respond to her 2 children?
Most times, the women we've made the women be the strong one, and then we've enabled the boy.
And it goes back. I'm reverting back to what DeAndre stated. When you enable a boy, you disable a man.
Yes.
So the atrocities of slavery, and I call this intergenerational emotional incarceration. Once that mother becomes a protector of the young boy, the daughter is now the independent one.
Yep.
She grows up, she's successful, she get a job, she get a house. Meanwhile, the young boy is looking for a woman like his mother.
Yes.
And the sister like, I ain't messing with you, Joker. You don't know how to do that.
Yep.
And that's passed down from generation to generation to generation to generation.
Yes, yes, yes.
And I call it intergenerational emotional incarceration. And that incarceration goes from generation to generation to generation.
Yes. So
and then you have the grandmother and the mother sometimes in conflict because the mom might want to now start raising the young man, but the grandmother wants to enable him, or vice versa. And the young boy's stuck in the middle.
Yes.
I'm already traumatized, but now I got to deal with this battle between my grandmother and my mother. And I'm stuck in the middle.
Yeah. And
I got to walk into my classroom every day, and nobody understands what I'm dealing with because I haven't been taught how to express my emotions. And now I'm a grown man, emotionally incarcerated.
Now you're that grown man, emotionally incarcerated, and then you're getting with a woman that's trying to deal with it, and she's ill-equipped to deal with it. And
she might not even dealt with her constipation and incarceration.
That's right. That's right. A lot of times.
That's why it's important that you got to transfer the trauma with truth and transparency.
Yes, yes.
In order to heal, because when you reveal, you heal and you seal the deal.
That's right.
When you reveal, you heal, and you seal the deal. And revealing is good.
Well, and that goes to though, we have an issue with trust. We have an issue with just, being, weak. We consider that weak because of how our upbringing is, like you said, slavery and all these things that play a part in it. But men and women, we all have a problem being open to one another and being the one that's, that's the weak one. And
especially men.
yeah.
We struggle with that that male menopause. We struggle.
Male menopause. Tell them about it before we wrap up, Dr. Flip.
That male menopause. So we're gonna close out with male menopause. Male menopause is a subconscious and conscious reaction to trauma, which is triggered when something that correlates with that trauma that you never dealt with that caused you to have unfiltered emotions. So, ladies, let me give you an example because I know I said a whole lot. So, basically, let's say you're riding down.
Menopause is a conscious and unconscious.
Is a subconscious and conscious reaction to past trauma, which causes the male to project that unfiltered emotions on a victim. So, in essence, pretty much it could be your someone you're dating. You ride in the car. Okay, let's just say you're riding in the car with your significant other, and you see a couple to your right-hand side, and they're arguing. Now, you're in the car, you guys are having a conversation, and you see this couple arguing and fighting. It triggers your subconscious back to your childhood trauma. Your significant other says something to you. Now, your subconscious, it goes into the conscious. You correlate the argument with that couple to the situation, the conversation you're having with the significant other. You project those unfiltered emotions and anger onto your spouse. But you pause before you do it, because that pause causes you to reflect and review the trauma that you never dealt with. So now you're projecting those unfiltered emotions and anger onto the person that's in the car with you, and they're looking at you like, "What's wrong with you?" And it's that male menopause. It's that time of period when that trauma has been triggered, where you pause, and these just subconscious goes to the conscious, and you project it on another person. And men experience it all the time.
I believe that.
And I'm gonna close out with this. I usually don't get it. I'm gonna give it up today, ladies. Okay?
Cause it's dark. He got to give it up because it's dark.
I'm gonna give it to you, ladies. Stop asking a brother what's wrong.
Don't ask what's wrong.
No, lady, you should never ask a male what's wrong. Because when you say to a man what's wrong, his ego will not allow him to tell you what's wrong. If he don't trust you, and if you don't have an excellent relationship with him, and he's not comfortable with you, what you should say to a brother who hurt you. Stop saying what's wrong, because our ego will not allow us to tell you what's wrong. What you should, because as a black man, when I walk out the house, I'm already dealing with societal issues. And then you're going to ask me what's wrong. Hell, you should already know what's wrong. I'm a black man. And I had to deal with society. And I come home, and you're going to ask me what's wrong. Because you're angry about something, or something happened. Or I don't have this certain look. Why not say to me, who hurt you today? Because when you say who hurt me, that shows me you care about me.
So funny you say that, Dr. Flip. I was talking, and I don't remember what show I was watching, and it was a show, and it was like, and the black boy said, he said, you know what? It was like a podcast or something, and he said, y'all get on these shows and y'all talking about, all just like what you're saying. He said, you know what? Y'all never ask just how we doing, just how are we doing? I was like, damn, that's deep.
Right.
we jumping off, but he was like, he was like, you don't know how important that is just to ask, how are you, black man? How are you doing?
How you doing? Oh, who hurt you?
Yes.
Who hurt you today, bro? Who hurt you today, bro?
I get that. I received that. Women, I hope
Stop
you
saying what's wrong. Because ain't nothing wrong with me. I'm black. I'm a brother. My ego. I don't share my emotions. You know ain't nothing wrong with me. But when you say who hurt you,
or what's going on, or how are you today? How are you doing?
Yeah, I just say who hurt you, because we dealing with hurt every day.
Yes, you're right. Who
And
disappointed you? Who hurt you? Yes.
Who hurt you? And then the wall will come back.
Okay. We're gonna try. We're gonna try. We're gonna definitely try.
How is gonna work?
I know. I got faith in you, Dr. Flip. You wouldn't be here.
I'm not saying, it ain't like no 30-day guarantee, but what you can't say to a brother what's wrong, because the brother gonna tell you ain't nothing wrong with me.
Right.
Yeah, I mean I'm a man. I'm in charge of this house. Ain't nothing wrong.
That's right. How you doing? How you doing today? Who hurt you? Who disappointed you? Talk to me about that. I got you. I receive it.
Okay. All right.
So we're a little over time because you're so engaging. So I'm going to ask you, what parting words do you want to share with our listening audience before we go?
Transfer your trauma with truth and transparency, and free at last. Free at last. Thank God Almighty, you will be free at last.
All right. You guys heard?
They can visit me at boysoffthehook.com.
You said boysoffthehook.com
is my website.
Okay.
This Saturday, I'm going to be wrapping up Destination Success Men's Conference from 1 to 2. It's Mental Health Saturday. And I'll send you the link that you can post in the chat room if they want to sign up. I think you still can sign up. It's a free conference. For males 13 to 35.
I'll include in the chat, definitely.
13 to 35. And I'm speaking from 1 to 2 on Saturday.
Okay.
The conversation might be a little different because it's all brothers. So I'll probably go a little harder. But But they can follow me at boysoffthehook.com, and they can find all my social media links.
Dr. William Flip Clay, right?
Yeah. Boysoffthehook.com or constipatedman.com too.
Constipatedman.com. Well, thank you, Dr. Flip, for joining me tonight. Guys, join me next Wednesday night at 9 p.m. when I'll have someone else who is on here. And we'll be doing what we do. We'll be having a conversation and hopefully dropping some knowledge and some jewels on you guys. And Dr. Flip, as always, it has been a complete pleasure. And thank you for taking the time to share with the audience.
Thank you, Dr. Chester. You have a good one.
You too. Enjoy the rest of your night.
All right. Bye-bye.